has just driven around the side of his good friend.
Thompson with the giveaway. Here's a chance in front. Oh, what a goal by Tage Thompson! TNT blows it up.
Or Quinn.
Or Peterka.
I think they perform better. You know, just they have better chemistry. They move on the ice better. They pass better.
But it's adding on.
It's just going into the whole
Yeah,
Grand
it's
Prix.
adding on to the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship.
Good evening and welcome to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Ron Volts alongside Brock Papke. We've got a full show for you tonight. Going to start off recapping last week's NFL action. Later on, we'll have Parker Gurnett on to talk some college football. And towards the end of the show, Jenna Polito will join me to talk hockey. But first, Brock, a recap of last week's NFL games, starting with the Thursday night football game, an NFC West battle between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. The 49ers were a team that, despite going to the Super Bowl last year, has not been able to find their footing. They've dealt with some injuries. Christian McCaffrey still out. George Kittle's been injured. They've had a few other players banged up. The 49ers trying to get back to 500, and they did that with a 36-24 win over the Seahawks in Seattle on Thursday night, despite Geno Smith going over 300 yards. Brock, this is an interesting game for a few reasons. The Seahawks starting 3-0 and now having lost their third straight game and losing at home to a division rival.
Yeah, it's really sad to see how the Seahawks have been falling off as the last part of the three games. It's kind of like they just need something that clicked that was in the season opener, because I'm looking at the scores right now. It's you got a bunch of field goals towards the beginning of the game, and then you just see brief glimpses of everything else that the Seahawks had tried to be. And may I ask, are they on fraud alert?
Are they on? That's an interesting question, and I've wondered that about a few teams, Brock, and I think we'll talk more about a few different teams that could potentially be on fraud alert.
Probably.
We'll move on to Sunday's games. There was a game early enough, if you woke up early enough on Sunday to catch it, a game in London between the Chicago Bears and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Rookie Caleb Williams with a sensational performance, and the Bears take down Jacksonville 35-16. The Bears are a team that going into this season had a lot of hype about them. They have, of course, Caleb Williams, the first overall pick, Rome Odunze, their first-round draft receiver as well. All in all, just a different future, a different aura about this Bears team. The issue with the Bears was going to be they're playing in a really tough NFC North. But, Brock, they're off to a 4-2 start, and offensively, they've looked pretty good.
Yeah, they have, man. Ever since they got a few players, it's just been amazing. But let's just talk about Jacksonville real quick. They have not had a good season as of late. Trevor Lawrence has not been pretty good, and everybody else. It's just the score speaks for itself, 16-35. It's just insanity, man.
Well, you honestly wonder, Brock. I mean, do you talk about Trevor Lawrence? He's a former first overall draft pick back in 2021. This Jacksonville team is 1-5. Trevor Lawrence has shown flashes of an ability to be successful in the past, but he hasn't had it. You have to be wondering in Jacksonville, are we sure Trevor Lawrence is really the answer?
Probably not. Probably not. With this season alone, they probably had a few interceptions here and there. I think he did in this game right here. But it's just, you kind of feel bad in a way, because he was the first overall draft pick, and you just put up numbers like this.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, man.
It absolutely is embarrassing. I mean, the fact that Jacksonville has brought in Mac Jones in the past to play backup, and he's honestly played better. But we'll move on to our 1 o'clock games. The Green Bay Packers look like they've reestablished themselves as a true threat in the NFC. A 34-13 beatdown of the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. Jordan Love has been out injured for the first few games of the season. Remember, he got injured early on in that game down in Brazil against the Eagles. He's back, and while maybe last week in his first game back against the Vikings didn't look particularly stellar, he did in this game against Arizona. 258 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. Romeo Doubs catching 2 of those touchdowns in his return from a suspension. The Packers, like the Bears, an NFC North team at 4-2. And Brock, we'll get more to it, but this NFC North is shaping up to maybe be the best division in the league so far this year.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's looking very nice with the Packers. Jordan Love is throwing like he's actually playing football instead of like some other teams. There's been like great kicks. There's been like great anything else. It's just what's going on with the Cardinals.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, Arizona was a team that I thought that when they played Buffalo in the first game of the season and really hung around with the Bills, I thought maybe this could be something pretty special from the Cardinals. They were putting together some things on offense. That hasn't been the case in the last few weeks. I mean, they got blown out by Washington at home last week, and now to lose badly. I mean, Lambeau Field, not an easy place to play, but to lose badly in this game, despite the fact that their tight end, Trey McBride, who's one of the best tight ends in the NFL, went nearly for 100 yards receiving. It's a little bit dicey for Arizona as they're off to a 2-4 start. So we'll move to our next game, an AFC South battle down in Tennessee with Anthony Richardson out for the second game in a row. Joe Flacco in to start for the Colts. No problem. He's 2-0 as the Colts beat the Tennessee Titans 20-17. Flacco didn't crack 200 yards, but he does throw 2 touchdowns. Brock, it's a repeat of last year with what Flacco did for the Browns.
Yeah, no, like Flacco's a really great quarterback. It's just he's going on like different teams and all this such, and like he's just shown time and time again how great of a thrower he's just all that. And like I'm really happy for him being on the Colts and beating the Titans itself. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a Colts team that when Anthony Richardson went down, I think they were kind of wondering what was going to happen with them, especially with Jonathan Taylor out injured as well. But Indianapolis able to go on the road and get a huge win. Another AFC battle that resulted in not as close of a game up in Foxborough. The Houston Texans, 1 week after beating the Bills on a last-second field goal, demolished the Patriots 41-21. Drake May steps in for the Patriots, their rookie quarterback, first-round pick in his first NFL game. And he wasn't bad, 243 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Unfortunately, this is just a Patriots team that, if I'm at risk of sounding blunt, this is a Patriots team that is not built to compete right now. They're off to a 1-5 start, and Brock, this is not a great team. But you look at the Texans, even though it's a win against a Patriots team that's maybe not the best, this is a Texans team that really is looking like a threat in the AFC.
Yeah, I'm just speechless in how this game went. Like, including that pass to Stephon Diggs. Like, that was a good pass.
Yeah, and C.J. Stroud, again, has just really taken this Texans offense to a whole new level. Houston's never really had a franchise quarterback that they can rally behind. I mean, Deshaun Watson was very good for them for a few years before going to Cleveland, but the Texans have never been a team that has been known for great franchise quarterback play, and they've got that with C.J. Stroud. Houston off to a 5-1 start this season. Wow. So we'll move on to our next game, an NFC battle down in New Orleans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Boy, their offense is off to a heck of a start this year. Baker Mayfield lighting it up. The Bucs beat the Saints 51-27. But another interesting story, the Saints, after a 2-0 start in which they looked really, really impressive, New Orleans has lost 4 in a row. They're down to 2-4. Now, I understand that Derek Carr has been out. Spencer Rattler played. Spencer Rattler, I don't think, was bad on Sunday either. This Saints team, they scored all 27 of their points in the second quarter. The Bucs jumped out to a 17-0 first quarter lead. The Saints rallied back, but down the stretch, Tampa Bay just buried them. Baker Mayfield has been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. 325 yards and 4 touchdowns again on Sunday. So, Brock, Tampa Bay's offense has been able to just, it doesn't matter. Their defense can surrender 30 points a game. They can outscore anybody.
Yeah, they can. They can just do whatever they want because like the offense is just really great. Baker Mayfield, as you said, he's just doing great. Like all those passes, all those just everything. But like it was a. I had my thought and I'm sorry, but it was a good game. I'll tell you that much.
It was an excellent game.
I wish I had my thought back.
Well, maybe you'll find it in the
Yeah, we'll
last
find
little
it.
bit of
We'll
this segment.
find it.
So the last game that we'll cover before cutting to break, the Philadelphia Eagles with a 20-16 win over the Cleveland Browns. Jalen Hurts, 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Browns dropped to 1-5 on the season. Brock, this offense for the Browns is just simply not good. I mean, Deshaun Watson has not been able to do anything positive for this team.
No, just it's embarrassing with this Browns stuff. Like all these teams that's been like 1-5, they have like certain stuff that's been like not clicking throughout the entire season. Well, obviously, except for like one game, but that game doesn't matter. But it's just like they need to play better stuff. They need to have like better defense. They need a better offense. We can all say that. It's just you need to implement it. Such.
Yeah, this is, I mean, you're talking about a Browns team that Kevin Stefanski on their sideline has won Coach of the Year before.
Yeah.
This is a Brown, they have the talent. They've got Nick Chubb, who is going to be returning. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Exactly.
This is a Browns team that just, I think they're so handicapped by all of the issues with Deshaun Watson, whether it be the money that's tied to him or the stake that their franchise has in him. What do the Browns do, Brock?
Quit. Just quit. Stop being a franchise.
What can
anymore.
you do?
Just quit. Stop while you're ahead. You got five losses. Why are you doing, man? Like, you just quit.
Well, I mean, the question, too, Kevin Stefanski could definitely be on the hot seat in Cleveland if this continues as well.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Brock, to recap some NFL action. When we come back, Jack Hoadley will join me to recap the rest of last week's NFL action. I won't leave you hanging here, Brock. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
I'm Nigel, I'm a friend of John's.
I come back here and the wall is just floating, like right there.
When you think of the local lowdown, what do you think of?
Well, when I think of the local lowdown, it's the live music that we have played in the studio.
It's gotta be the laughs we shared. The memorable moments during the whole thing. Oh my God, so fun.
The local lowdown for me is the people behind the scenes, the amazing team that we have making the show.
Oh, it's gotta be exploring all sorts of genres and music I've never heard before.
Oh, easy. Going out to shows and talking to artists and getting the latest news on what they have planned for the future.
It's about these artists, man. Giving them a platform to showcase what they've worked so hard on and show their music to the community. It's all about supporting the local scene of music to keep it running for years to come. And of course, the band merch. You can't forget about the merch.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm now joined by Jack Hoadley to recap the rest of last week's NFL action. So we'll jump right in, Jack. The first game in Baltimore. A heck of a battle between the Washington Commanders and the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh yeah, I mean, just from the start of this game, you could tell that Lamar Jackson was especially locked in. I know he had the interception, but particularly he really put the doubters down about him being a running back for this game. As far as Washington goes, sitting at 4-2, they still have a really good chance to win their division with a lackluster Eagles team, a floundering Cowboys team, and the New York Giants.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you really say about the New York Giants? We'll get to that later. For Washington, this is a team that I think at the beginning of the season, most people thought, okay, the NFC East is probably going to come down to either Dallas or Philadelphia. The fact that Washington has been as excellent as they have been, Jaden Daniels has been absolutely remarkable. I actually made a change in my fantasy football team. I benched Josh Allen for Jaden Daniels, which I know sounds terrible for a Bills fan to say, but it was a business decision. It was purely business, and it worked out for me. I won last week. But Jaden Daniels has excelled with Washington so far this year. And you asked a question in our notes. You believe the Baltimore Ravens might be the best team in the NFL?
I absolutely think so. They are passing at a super efficient rate and running the ball like we've never seen before. This team is absolutely set to go on a run, and I know they had a rough first couple games of the season, but they're a shoe size away from being 5-1 and at the top of the AFC.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Ravens team that you talk about. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. The Ravens started 0-2, but they've won 4 in a row and look really, really good. So our next game of battle out west in the AFC, the Los Angeles Chargers against the Denver Broncos. And an interesting story, actually, from this game. Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh had to leave mid-game and get checked out by medical examiners for a heart arrhythmia. He returned to the game to finish coaching, but no doubt a scary moment, especially in Mile High in Denver.
That has to be absolutely the first time I've ever seen a head coach go to the injury tent. I mean, that was probably the most exciting thing that happened in this game, however, is just from the start you could tell that the Chargers were all over this game. And despite a late push from Denver at the end, it was really just a complete win for the Chargers.
Yeah, Denver made a really good run at it at the end. I mean, the Broncos scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. All 16 of their points the Chargers ended up holding on for the 23-16 win. Our next game out in Vegas, a dominant performance by the Pittsburgh Steelers as they take down the Raiders 32-13. Najee Harris looked very impressive for the Steelers on Sunday as well, going over 100 yards, and this is a level that Pittsburgh has been wanting to see from him since they drafted him in the first round a couple of years back. This Pittsburgh team is off to a 4-2 start, but Jack, an interesting decision, benching Justin Fields, who's gotten them to 4-2 for Russell Wilson.
Now, listen, I would also agree that it's an interesting choice to take change from your 4-2 quarterback and switch to someone who hasn't played in over 8 months or so, but Mr. Unlimited is here to prove why he should be the starter, and if there's anyone in this league that I trust, it's certainly Mike Tomlin.
I agree. You know that there are 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and Mike Tomlin having a winning record. So it's pretty much set in stone that Pittsburgh's going to find some way to win 9 or 10 games this season. Also, important to mention in this game, the Raiders now moving on without Davante Adams after trading him to the New York Jets last week, Jack.
The more comical aspect of this game is that Mike Tomlin now has to plan for him 2 weeks in a row, going to the New York Jets in a big-time move on a Tuesday afternoon. But another thing that I'd like to mention is that the Raiders are going to be more than okay without Adams because they have who I believe is already a top 5 tight end in the NFL in Brock Bowers. I think that he has a strong case for Rookie of the Year if he keeps at the pace that he's going at.
I absolutely agree. As a fan of an SEC football team myself, I will say my unbiased opinion is that Brock Bowers is maybe the best tight end I've ever seen in college football. I mean, he's certainly up there from his days at Georgia. We'll move on to our next game. I know this is going to be a little bit of a painful one for you, Jack. The Detroit Lions going down to Dallas and putting on a show. The Lions, by the end of this game, I mean, Jared Goff is throwing passes to offensive linemen. They're bringing in guys as eligible receivers. The Lions were just toying with the Cowboys by the end of this game. I've never seen Dallas get absolutely owned in their, I mean, they've had a few bad home losses in a row, but I don't know that I've ever seen the Cowboys get owned in their home stadium this badly. And Jack, I know as a Cowboys fan, it was a rough one for you, but boy, Detroit looked pretty good.
Yeah, not to sugarcoat it, Detroit looked flat out unbeatable during this game. And now I'm going to get into the rest of it. I'm going to start to sound like a little bit of a Stephen A. Smith here, but Dallas not only lost that game, they got flat out embarrassed, and there needs to be moves to be made to fix this immediately. Jerry Jones is blowing up on radio shows. We have a run game that I think I could defend by myself. It's just a sad days as a Dallas fan.
It really is. I mean, the Cowboys just looked flat in absolutely every aspect of the game on Sunday. And something else, too, the Lions, as great of a game as it was, for Detroit, they couldn't have left that stadium feeling too much like winners because Aiden Hutchinson, their dominant pass rusher, the heart and soul of their defense, out for the year after a gruesome leg injury, Jack.
Those non-contact injuries are really starting to tear up the rest of the NFL. Aiden Hutchinson was on track for a Defensive Player of the Year type season and possibly breaking records. It's just so heartbreaking to see such a quality NFL player go down in such a gruesome way, especially.
Yeah, it was a horrible injury. It was so bad. I had the NFL Red Zone on Sunday, so I didn't see the injury live, but when they cut to the full screen of that game, they said they wouldn't even show it, and Aiden Hutchinson was getting carted off of the field, and it's just these injuries, you're right, Jack, they've been all over the place so far this season. It's been terrible.
Yeah, especially with the turf fields that are now being used more and more frequently in these new stadiums that are being built. It's seeming like player safety is focusing more on the head area and not what's actually ending seasons for these players. Both are very important, but this is just, it's so horrible to see in our league.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to our next game, an NFC South battle. The Atlanta Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers. Now, for Atlanta, they went into this game without Bijan Robinson, and anytime you go on the road to play a divisional game, there's an added challenge to that. However, that gets balanced out when you're playing a team like the Carolina Panthers, and Atlanta was able to sort of take control in this game early, although Carolina kept it somewhat close. It was a 5-point game at the half, and then down the stretch, Atlanta just is able to run away with it. This Falcons team has been pretty solid. I mean, the fact that they've been able to add some pieces like Kirk Cousins came in, Drake London has really looked like a true number one receiver so far. Atlanta is 4-2. But you look at the Carolina side, Jack, and Andy Dalton, you know, Bryce Young was benched a couple of weeks ago. They bring in Andy Dalton. He gets the win over the Raiders. But since then, he hasn't looked very good. And it leads to the question, should they just put Bryce Young back in?
Now, I know as an Auburn football fan, you're not going to be a very big fan of what I'm about to say. But I'm begging Dave Canales, the head coach of the Panthers, as a football fan, put Bryce Young back in the game. He deserves another shot to at least prove himself, and nobody's excited about watching Andy Dalton play football for the rest of the year, especially as a Cowboys fan who had to experience it.
Now, I will say, Jack, there are, for any Buffalo Bills fans watching, Bills fans will always have a soft spot in their heart for Andy Dalton because of his touchdown pass to put the Bills in the playoffs back in 2017, but I agree with you. I mean, Carolina, at this point, you're not really gaining anything by having Andy Dalton. You know what you have with Andy Dalton. With Bryce Young, he's a young quarterback, pardon the pun, he's a quarterback that needs more experience, he needs more reps, and I'm going to be flat out honest, Bryce Young has been terrible so far in his NFL career. But what has he had to play around? Carolina has not supported him with absolutely any talent. No quarterback would succeed down there in that situation. So it's kind of an unwinnable deal for Bryce Young, Jack.
Absolutely. And I think, kind of switching gears to the Falcons side of this, it's really showing what Kirk Cousins has been able to do with this team. He has them looking like a contender, and I know it's the Panthers, but particularly in that game against the Buccaneers 2 weeks ago, that's where I saw them really shine. Is he was super impressive. And I think that this game doesn't necessarily clarify that they're a contender, but further gives them a case for it.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to Sunday Night Football, and a game that I'm not going to lie, Jack, I fell asleep during. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the New York Giants 17-7 in a game that was well, not all that exciting.
The Cowboys played the Steelers up until 1 o'clock in the morning last week, and I was more awake during that game. Ever since the first drive of that game where Joe Burrow had a 50-yard rushing touchdown, it just felt like the offenses fell flat the entire time. But that's not to say that the only reason Cincinnati has even 2 wins this far in the season is purely because of their offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they kept him in the game. I thought an interesting note about this game, Daniel Jones was the entire game's leading rusher. He had 56 yards. I mean, that's just not exactly the product that NBC wants for Sunday Night Football, Jack. But we'll move on to our last game of the week, and of course for Buffalo fans, the most important game of the week, Monday Night Football. The Bills going to New Jersey to pick up a 23-20 win over the New York Jets. I'll admit, Jack, I missed a good amount of this game. Those Monday night meetings are always a little bit tricky. I have to miss half the games. But the Bills able to come away with a win, although it wasn't super pretty, Jack.
No, not a pretty win. An ugly win for the Bills on Monday Night Football in MetLife, which really is the shining of this game. But also what didn't shine at all in this game were the legs on both sides of the field. These kickers could not put it through the uprights, and that's ultimately what cost the Jets this game.
Yeah, absolutely. The Bills did bring in another kicker to compete with Tyler Bass as well this week in practice. It's just, like you said, it's just not acceptable. The Bills are paying Tyler Bass way too much money to miss the kicks that he's missing. I mean, he's a kicker that I don't want to harp on him too much, but Tyler Bass has become untrustable in certain situations. You get the feeling that anytime it's between 40 and 50 yards, he's going to miss, and sometimes he does. And kickers do miss in the NFL, but Bass has been missing a lot for the amount of trust and faith that the Bills are putting in him. The Bills did go out after this win and improve their roster, making a trade with the Cleveland Browns to pick up Amari Cooper. And this, Jack, I don't know about you, this move gives the Bills a receiver, a go-to guy that they desperately need.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to kind of play devil's advocate here. I think that this move was kind of a stagnant one for the Bills. When I watched them play, which living here in Fredonia, I have had the pleasure of watching them for the entire season, and it just doesn't seem like a number one wide receiver was really their issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Bills have some other things they need to clean up before coming back home to face the Tennessee Titans at 1 p.m. on Sunday. So thanks for joining me, Jack. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, Parker Gurnett will be joining me to talk some college football. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
We've been down there. You gotta do the same. Post office. All you do is sign. So don't get nervous. Sign your name. For selective service. It takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. For selective service.
Hey guys, if you're about to turn 18, you've got to register with Selective Service. It's simple. Just go down to the post office, fill out a card, and turn it in. That's all there is to it. There's no draft now. You're just adding your name to Selective Service's list in case there's a national emergency.
So if you're 18 now, Selective Service, you gotta get down to the post office.
Register with Selective Service. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the law.
Takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. Selective Service.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm joined now by Parker Gurnett to talk about some college football. Parker, a lot of good games coming up this weekend.
Oh, plenty of good games. And you know what? First one's probably my favorite, representing the Tennessee Bulls here, of course, facing off at home against Bama. Matt, great matchup.
It absolutely should be a good game. I mean, this is an Alabama team that they got burned a couple of weeks ago against Vanderbilt. And for any regular viewers or people who know me, I am not an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. I am a loyal Auburn Tigers fan. Alabama is my version of the Miami Dolphins, to put it in a Bills fan's perspective. And I'm going to be honest and take my bias out of it. Alabama hasn't looked good in a couple of weeks. I mean, they lost 2 weeks ago on the road against Vanderbilt. Last week against South Carolina, at the end of the game, Alabama was up by 2. South Carolina goes for an onside kick. They get it, and the Gamecocks would have had a chance to drive down the field and maybe kick a game-winning field goal if a pass that was deflected in the air was not caught by an offensive lineman who then tried to run and got tackled and burned about 10 or 12 seconds. Alabama, and this game was at Alabama too. So, Parker, this is an Alabama team that they're a 3-point favorite going into Neyland Stadium on Saturday, but they have not looked all that dominant.
No, the offense has not looked great at all. And not even to mention that the offense hasn't looked great. They're coming in facing a top 2 or 3 in all of NCAA football in the Tennessee defense. I mean, grant you, the defense just lost Keenan Pili, their great, outstanding linebacker. But you still have almost overall projected #1 pick James Pierce Jr. on that defensive line, who came up clutch against the game in Florida with that goal line stop, getting the fumble recovery. But I mean, I'd have to be scared if you're Bama coming and facing that defense. Not only that defense, but that offense. They haven't shown what they're fully capable of yet this year in the SEC. And that Bama defense has somewhat gotten exposed the last few weeks. So I think it's going to be a lot different of a game than people think. And I'm not just speaking as a Tennessee fan here. But, you know, Tennessee comes into the game with also, got to mention, the top 4 QBs in the next few years. They have 5-star in 2023 in Nico Imawuanwambela. They have 4-star in 2024 in Jake Merklinger. 4-star next year's high school class in George McIntyre. And then they have #1 rated QB prospect in all of the class of 2026 of Fazian Brandon. So Tennessee's been recruiting. So, you know, Bama's thought past few years some easy wins. I don't know, not anymore.
Yeah, this is just, it's a different Alabama team. And as good as they've looked in certain games, like their win over Georgia, that was also in the friendly confines of their own stadium. They're going to Neyland Stadium, Parker, where, remember, 2 years ago, they lost. This is, I mean, Neyland is one of the toughest places to play in all of college football.
102,000 people in that stadium, sold out crowd.
I was going to say, I think there's a good chance that by the end of that game, the goalposts may end up in the, which river is it down there?
It's the Tennessee River right outside.
It's the Tennessee River, makes sense.
Runs right through campus.
That's what they did 2 years ago when Tennessee beat Alabama in 2022. The fans stormed the field, tore down the goalposts, and dumped them in the Tennessee River. So maybe the same thing will happen
as
on
long
Saturday.
as I'm not driving like I was the last time that happened. I pulled over,
forgot about
jumped
that.
out of
That's
my
right.
car and cheered.
That's right,
But
of course.
This year I'll be hopefully relaxing, sitting on the
Of
couch
course,
with
and no
Matt,
matter what
watching that
happens
game.
with your college football team, we advocate safe driving no matter the result. But we'll move on to our next few games, and there's another really big one in college football, and an SEC battle as #1 Texas hosts #5 Georgia. This is a Bulldogs team that they got burned with the loss at Alabama a few weeks ago. But this is still a Georgia team that is really, really dominant. They've won. They've only lost 2 games in the last 2 seasons, both to Alabama. This is in the last multiple seasons, actually. Georgia is a team that, and again, it pains me to say this as an Auburn Tigers fan, Georgia is a team that is genuinely maybe one of the best in all of college football. This is a team that the expansion of the playoffs is going to help teams like Georgia. In the past, with the 4-team playoff, or even before that with the BCS years ago, you would have a team that might lose a tough game, you know, on the road against a really top-tier team like Georgia did early in the season, and it would keep them out of championship contention. With the 12-team playoff, that's not the case anymore. A team like Georgia could still run the table and could still make the playoffs and compete for a championship, Parker, even though they had that loss to Alabama at the beginning of the year. And on the flip side of the coin, you've got a Texas Longhorns team that looks really, really good in their first season in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, according to ESPN Analytics, they're giving Texas, again, a 76.2% chance of winning this game. Now, going in and playing down in Texas, that's not an easy task either. But you got to think Georgia, I think they just get overrated because they've been a powerhouse for so long, you know, and they have playing, you know, Carson Beck. I'm not a big advocate for, you know, lifelong QBs and NCAA. I don't like it. I like to see new faces, give new guys a chance. It's why they're there to play college football, not stick to the same guy year in and year out. But I think, you know, Quinn Ewers coming back. I think, you know, they have Isaiah Bond, who they've lost to in the past with Bama. Now they've got them on their team, and Isaiah Bond has looked phenomenal in the Texas Orange. So I think Texas really has a good chance of proving why right now they're the #1 ranked team in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Texas team that I think coming into the season with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, I kind of thought that it might be a rude awakening for both teams. That's kind of been the case for Oklahoma, not for Texas. They've been absolutely dominant as ever since moving over from the Big 12 to the SEC. And I will mention, Parker, that talking about Isaiah Bond does pain me as an Auburn fan. Of course, last year he was the one that caught the game-winning touchdown pass on 4th and 31 against Auburn, which was one of the most devastating losses I think I've ever really had as a sports fan. But it's going to be an interesting game on Saturday, and like you said, no easy task going down to Austin and taking on the Longhorns. Lots of other interesting games going on in college football. Those are kind of the two main ones. An interesting one to watch on Friday night, Oregon, who has looked really, really good. They're coming off a big win over Ohio State. Oregon, as number 2 in the country, undefeated, they're going on the road to face Purdue. Now, Purdue is 1-5, and they're winless so far in conference play. However, if there is anything that the Purdue Boilermakers are good at and are known for, it is pulling off those stunning upsets against top-ranked teams in East Lafayette in night games. They've done it before. They did it to Ohio State when the Buckeyes were number 1 a few years ago, you might remember. This is an Oregon team that, yeah, the Ducks are favored by 28.5 points. Don't sleep on Purdue in this game, though, Parker. This could get interesting on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a very interesting game, but you got to remember, Oregon's got Dylan Gabriel at QB, another one of those that's been around for a while. But I just feel like this is not the game that Purdue upsets. I just think that Oregon is riding that high after ultimately upsetting Ohio State, really. I think they're riding that high train. I think they got a lot of confidence. They're playing confident football. I think they can go into East Lafayette and prove that this is why they're the number 2 ranked team in the country.
Absolutely, and that game at 8 p.m. tomorrow night on Fox. Another thing to talk about in college football to wrap up, the emergence of Army and Navy this year. Both teams are ranked, Army number 24 and Navy, or Army number 23 rather, and Navy 25. Both teams undefeated. Parker, the Army-Navy game is already a spectacle of college football. How special would it be if these two teams could keep winning?
I think, I don't even know when the last time, I think it's the 1980s, I believe, was the last time both Army and Navy were both ranked in the AP Top 25. So obviously it's been a while. And there's a lot of people who, they got their college teams, and then they argue between Army and Navy in football. Air Force has the team. Air Force is just kind of, they've never been that football team. But for Army and Navy, the TV ratings, the speciality of this game, just imagine, we were talking on the way over here, Matt and I live together, we were talking on the way here and thinking, what if they play one week and then play a championship game the following week? So.
Oh, absolutely. That Army-Navy game, always one of the biggest draws in college football the entire season. Well, that'll wrap it up for college football. Thanks for joining me, Parker. Going to take a short break. When we come back, Jenna Polito will join me to talk about some NHL hockey. Thanks for joining us. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school or even let alone go to college, so I'm trying to break that barrier.
I'm Nigel, I'm a friend of John's. I come back here and the wall is just floating, like right there.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Johnson jersey.
And welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. Jenna Polito is joining me to talk some NHL hockey. So a few interesting stories to get to. First, the Sabres in action right now, trailing 5-3 to the Columbus Blue Jackets on the road. Yeah. Jenna, another rough night for the Sabres goaltending. What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just can't understand what is happening. I mean, if you look at everything, the Cards and our new coach, we have a new captain and everything. We're supposed to be doing better. I mean, Lindy Ruff came back. He took us to the finals in 1999. We had him from 1997 to 2013. He's the most winningest coach in Buffalo history. So, like, something's got to give. I really don't know what's happening.
I would think so. I mean, I thought this on the way over here. I mean, Jenna, are we really sure that the Sabres are actually any good? I hate to be this negative, but there's not a single thing that the Sabres have done well this season. I mean, 5-on-5, they can't capitalize on any offensive chances. They have the worst power play in the NHL, haven't scored a power play goal yet this year. Their penalty kill was good to start the year, but they've been totally exposed by opposing power plays. Their goaltending hasn't been good, whether it's been Luukkonen or Levi in net. It's been shaky, but the last few games certainly not good. Levi's already given up 5 goals so far tonight. Defensively, they haven't been good. Their awareness has been nowhere to be found. No one seems to want to go to the front of the net. They've got to be the worst passing team in the entire NHL. These things sort of add up, and you honestly wonder whether or not the Buffalo Sabres are going to be anywhere close to the playoffs this year. And it shouldn't be at this point. Like you said, I mean, Lindy Ruff is in his first season back coaching the team. There was all this excitement. There was the fear, though, that did Kevin Adams do enough to improve the team after, Jeff Skinner was gone and certain changes with the team. Not only did this team not improve, Jenna, they got worse in almost every single area. I mean, this was a team that was supposed to be better. They're worse in just about every way.
I mean, I was at the home opener that was the LA Kings on, I believe, the 10th or something. And before they started the game, they called out the entire team's name and the general managers and the coach. They booed Kevin Adams. Like, that is not something that can be taken lightly either. So, I mean, yeah, especially if we're going to talk about trading Jeff Skinner and everything, in my personal opinion, I don't think Jeff Skinner would have done well under Ruff's coaching. I think he has no room for any kind of bad habits or just pointless penalties or anything like that, or goofing off, I guess. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, for a 1-3-1 start for a team that is expected by everyone besides their actual fans to be making the playoffs this year, doesn't look that way.
Not at all. Not at all. I know there's a few other NHL stories that you wanted to get to, Jenna. For starters, a little bit of history with the Seattle Kraken, as their assistant coach has become the first woman to coach in an NHL regular season game. Very interesting story.
Yeah, so their assistant captain, Jessica Campbell, she made her debut against, I believe it was the St. Louis Blues in their opener as the first woman coach ever. And it's very cool to see, especially with, the PWHL and everything starting up last year. And yeah, it's just really good to see the gender barriers being broken down. Currently, just a little bit into the Kraken, they are 2-2, fourth in the Pacific Division in the Western Conference, and they're playing the Flyers tonight at 10, which I guess would be 7 in Pacific time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it like you said, just the excellent, with all of the gender barriers being broken down and the emergence of the PWHL. Hockey's a sport that in the past has sometimes had a little bit of a culture issue with certain things that have taken place and issues and scandals that have been dealt with. It's really neat to see this happen, and for Jessica Campbell to be coaching a newer team like Seattle. You mentioned the PWHL too. I wish Buffalo would get a team. I really wish that they would. Right now they only have 6 teams.
I think it's like New York, Toronto, like maybe
Boston has a team. There's a few up in Canada. It's a fascinating league and a very fun league to watch, and I absolutely wish that Buffalo would get a team in the near future.
Yeah.
Moving on to the rest of the NHL, Macklin Celebrini, the first overall pick, recently made his debut with the San Jose Sharks. Now, this is a Sharks team that, with former Buffalo Sabre Mike Greer as their general manager, they've really gone deep into a rebuild. The Sharks have been a team that has struggled the last few years since they had some success in previous years when guys like Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Brent Burns, Logan Couture were there. the old guard is gone and sort of the new young guard is here. And Macklin Celebrini has looked really, really good so far, Jenna. He's a huge, huge part of their future plans.
Yeah, I mean, he was first overall pick for the 2024 draft for a reason. I think, especially with this rebuild San Jose is trying to do, I believe they were in last place in the entire league last year or something. I mean, honestly, it's not going off to that good of a start. I believe they are 0-1-2. They were playing the Jets on Friday, so they're currently 6th in the Pacific. I think one team is below them. I'm not sure exactly who it is again, but so I mean, there is some progress. I mean, we're expecting to see a lot from Macklin Celebrini in the coming games. There are 82 games in the season, so like you can't really base anything off the first few games, but I mean, can we?
Yeah.
We can.
Elsewhere in the NHL, a couple of Pittsburgh Penguins legends notched some records last night against the Sabres in an overtime win. Sidney Crosby with the overtime winning goal reached 1,600 points on his NHL career as the 10th player to do so in league history. And Evgeny Malkin with his 500th career goal, the 48th player to do so. Again, we find ourselves back to the Sabres, Jenna. And last night's game, a game that Buffalo led 3-1, and I guess we'll start with the accomplishments of Crosby and Malkin. The fact that they have been so successful for so long is quite impressive.
Yeah, I mean, this was a tough game to watch, especially coming off that win for the Florida Panthers. The reigning Stanley Cup champions, where we beat them, I believe. What was it?
Yeah, on Saturday, beating Florida 5-2, and looking very good for the first time all season.
Especially, I mean, through the first 3 games, the Kings and the 2 games in Prague, we couldn't even put 3 goals on the board. I mean, I think that's our total throughout the 3 games, and then 5. So I mean, especially with the Penguins, though, we started off really strong. We had Thompson start and light the lamp, and then we had Greenway. Peterka came back in that game after suffering concussion from the Prague games, so that was good to see. He also got a score. And then during the second period, I don't know what happened. I mean, Drew O'Connor with a shorthanded goal, like our penalty kill just looked absolutely horrid. And I mean, it just kept piling on from there.
Oh, it's been horrendous. I mean, the Sabres, like you said, they had a 3-1 lead later in the game. I mean, it was a close game in the third period. J.J. Peterka and Ryan McLeod scored just 40 seconds apart in the third to give Buffalo a 5-4 lead. And it looked like they're going to hold on, but here we go, the same old song and dance. The Buffalo Sabres don't have any clue how to hold on to hockey games. Ricard Raquel scores to tie the game with 46 seconds left, and then Crosby wins the game in overtime on the power play, which, shocker, the Sabres special teams, terrible again, like it's been absolutely all season. It doesn't matter whether they're on the power play or the penalty kill. This team just can't seem to figure out how to execute properly. When they're on the power play, there's no traffic going to the front of the net. It's physically painful to watch them try and enter the zone and set something up. This is a team that, again, we mentioned it earlier in the show, they've gotten worse in almost every single area. They were in the box significantly more than Pittsburgh was last night as well. The face-off percentage, too. Pittsburgh won 62% of draws. Jenna, where do the Sabres go from here?
I have no idea. I mean, obviously not going very well with the Blue Jackets game. I can't remember exactly where our next game is, but I just think what we need to do is we need to actually play these games the entirety of the game. As soon as we start having a lead, for some reason we decide that, okay, we can back off, we can alleviate a little bit of the pressure, but we need to keep that on 100% of the time so that, they don't come back and then win in overtime, just like this Penguins game.
Yeah, Lindy Ruff is a head coach who is notorious for really being very physically demanding of his players. I think we need to see more of that. I think these players flat out need to be held more accountable, not to the effect of, you're going to make them skate sprints for every single mistake that they make, but if the Sabres, if you're making mistakes constantly, make them skate back and forth. You've got to make these guys learn that this type of messing up left and right unacceptable at the NHL level. But hopefully the Sabres turn it around again, trailing the Columbus Blue Jackets 5-3 at the moment. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Sports Hour tonight. Thanks, Jenna, for joining me to talk about some NHL. We'll be back next week to hopefully recap a Bills win. Maybe the Sabres will be doing a little bit better. And again, a recap of some other action around the sports world. For all of us here at WNYF, I'm Matt Volz. This has been Sports Hour. Good night.